Turn-based combat blows. It really isn't my thing. I've said this before, it's a recent development. There's very few turn-based games that are actually fun to me. So when I play a turn-based game, I expect everything outside of the combat to be good. And the Final Fantasy series always delivers strongly somewhere. Incredible soundtracks, interesting characters, vast and beautiful worlds to explore, stunning CGI cutscenes. But I've never been a fan of the combat. So when I heard that Final Fantasy XVI was coming to PC in September, I got so excited. I thought, this is my chance to enjoy a Final Fantasy game without being burnt out by turn-based combat. Unlike most of its predecessors, Final Fantasy XVI is not a turn-based RPG. It's more like Devil May Cry, and that's honestly more my type. Throw Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, or Devil May Cry in front of me, and I will gladly play them for several hours at a time. But all of these games don't really have a strong story in them. They're incredibly entertaining to watch, but I don't know anyone who sat there and gone, Bayonetta is a masterclass in storytelling. Her relationship with Luca is the best in gaming. It never really mattered though, because you could easily dismiss the story in them without it heavily affecting your experience. Final Fantasy XVI, on the other hand, is highly story focused, and if you're going to do that, then it should deliver. Before I begin, I'm just gonna say that I'm not gonna go too deep into the story. It's likely that if you're watching this, then you know what's up. If you don't, then please redirect yourself to the many individuals on YouTube who can explain it much more eloquently than I could. Anyway, the demo really impressed me. It starts off with this grand battle between Ifrit and the Phoenix, and then it transitions to the present where you meet Clive for the first time. It introduces you to some of the kingdoms, its antagonists, the icons, and then you travel to the past where you're given more background on Clive, and you get a chance to experience Final Fantasy XVI's combat system. As I was playing, it felt like the experience was only going up. The combat was really entertaining, the music was really good, the performances felt natural, and then it just hits this insane peak where everything goes wrong, but so right. The castle's on fire, you fight this badass Dragoon Knight, pretty much everyone dies, including the king, and then you find out that the two creatures fighting at the beginning are actually the two brothers, and you can only watch as Joshua gets brutally ripped apart. And then after the battle, you find out that the Duchess betrayed them all, got everyone killed, and put her own son into slavery, and you're thinking, Jesus, how evil is this woman? And then the demo just ends. I was happy to discover that a lot of the highs from the demo continued into the full game. The armor is fucking sexy, and all of the outfits and designs were consistent throughout. They felt grounded. An issue that I've had in the past with this series is consistency, and I kind of hinted at it before when I played the Metaphor demo. Let's take Final Fantasy X. Look at Lulu. What the fuck is this outfit? How does she put that on? Look at all of those belts. And then just look at the whole party. We have a furry, a samurai, 2 underwater volleyball players, and a goth magician. I know that they're all from different parts of the world or whatever, but these two grew up in the same village, by the beach, and there is no one who dresses like Lulu there. It just doesn't feel right to me. In Final Fantasy XVI, they've gone for a medieval aesthetic, and they've stayed committed to that throughout. You can tell when characters are from different kingdoms, but they look different whilst looking like they belong in the same world, and I much prefer that over this. Even with the weapons, they've stayed committed. When I first started this game, I was like, damn, that's a really cool sword. But then disappointment followed, as I assumed that I'd be forced to change my sword into a much uglier one when the combat gets harder. Thankfully, there's a feature where you can customize your sword's appearance to whichever one you like, even if you have a different sword equipped. Please, 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 Square Enix, keep doing this. Do you know how gross it is for me to get the iconic Buster Sword and then eventually have to change it to these abominations that you call swords if I want their bonuses? Seriously, what is that? So, I think that its story, combat, music, characters, aesthetic, all of it was exceptionally strong in the beginning. Unfortunately, past the prologue, things start to waver. There are some really good moments in this game, but the game makes you suffer to get to them. All of the boss fights, with maybe a few exceptions, are phenomenal. It really knows how to turn the volume up, it just doesn't know when to do it. The Final Fantasy XVI experience can best be described as bradycardic, where it has these big bursts of fun, and then basically nothing for a few hours. The pacing sucks so much. Between its biggest moments, it will put you through really tedious side quests that feel way longer than they actually are. compulsory ones. And because it puts you through these annoying tasks so frequently, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to touch the actual side quests at all, because I genuinely gave up towards the end of the game. At the very least, it marks the important ones for you that can upgrade your potions or give you new gear. I'd say that some side quests should be compulsory, like the Chocobo one, because of how much you have to walk around. But you genuinely have no way of knowing whether a side quest, narratively, is going to be good or not, because not all of the good ones are marked with plus or chest symbols, and the genuine good ones are at the end of the game. But it's likely that the game has put such a bad taste in your mouth by now with all of the forced side quests you've had to swallow that you won't want to do them at all. And then we have the main story. I was really intrigued at first, because the story was quite simple, but good. But this is a Final Fantasy game, so nothing can ever be simple. And it's painful because this is the first Final Fantasy game that's 18 plus.
You cock!
While it may look like Game of Thrones, that's where the resemblance ends. There isn't as much depth as there should be. Characters get naked, get freaky, and all sorts. But the plot just feels more nonsensical as it goes on. It portrays itself as being more mature, but ultimately it ends up being just as convoluted as the rest of the series. Every time this dude was on screen, I just rolled my eyes because I knew he was going to spit nonsense at me. Nonsense that you'll only vaguely understand or care about at the end of the game. One of the game's most impactful moments, probably the moment that sold everyone on buying the game, Joshua's death, is ruined because they just immediately bring him back and it's not even subtle.
He must be stopped.
I was expecting so much more from these two as well. What the fuck? They immediately establish Annabella as a total piece of shit, and then she disappears for ages, has some brief appearances, and then dies. She's so underutilized. Also, did you guys know that she's 52 here? Damn. And then we have Jill, who is with you for the majority of the game but manages to do nothing. These two have a cute relationship, sure, but Jill is given one cool moment in the entire game before she becomes an afterthought again. There was only one character that genuinely stuck with me, and that's Sid.
I think we're gonna need a bigger sword.
Mine's bigger.
Thank you, Clive, but I meant that figuratively.
I kept waiting, over and over, for the story to pick up, and by the end of the game, my motivation to keep playing was only coming from the music, the spectacles, and the combat system. If it wasn't for those three things, this game wouldn't have been bradycardic, it would have been a flatline. But it does all of those things really well. The story wasn't that bad, but the combat? That's where this game really shines for me. The combat is quite easy, but the combination of the new abilities like the Titanic block and the badass soundtrack make you feel, well, like a badass. Just look at me go. I'm spearing through these enemies, I'm knocking this dude with 1,000 punches, and like I said, there are some really, really good moments. I have to shout out the Titan fight because it was my favorite one. It starts with you basically fighting his legs, and then you send him flying, then he sends you flying outside of the arena. Holy shit. And then he becomes massive, so you have to run back to him. What? You run along these branches of the earth, snap one off, send it flying back down to him, and then you fly kick him to finish him off. And then he comes back, so now you have to fight him while falling wherever this is. What a fight. What I will say though is that when you're fighting, the health bars can feel like, well, trying to shave a rock with a blunt blade. Maybe that's a bit far, but it feels like it takes way too long to get through an enemy's health bar. What's the point of leveling up and getting all of the fancy new swords if they don't have much of an effect in the first place? The only parts where the health bars didn't feel like much of an issue was when I was purposefully putting myself up against a tough enemy, like with the hunts. But if I've done a fair bit of side quests and leveling before a main story quest and it's still taking forever to get through enemies, then why should I even bother doing the additional stuff? At that point, I'm just doing it so I can watch a bar go down slightly faster. And the damage numbers, what on earth? This is a problem I had with Crisis Core, where there's just so many different effects going on, and then there's just loads of little damage numbers everywhere. Just add an option to turn it off. And a sprint button, please. And while I'm in a nitpicking mood, can we please put the dubstep away? There's a time and a place, guys. When your soundtrack throughout has been this? Why is it now this? But you know what? In spite of all of that, It was good. I still had a lot of fun, even if I felt like the game was resistant to it. It's certainly a flawed experience, but it had enough standout moments to keep my attention, even if I didn't always fully connect with them. Like, I don't really care about Ultima or his bullshit plan, but man, ending the fight with a right hook, that is so fucking cool. What a beautiful ending too. And man, I never thought I'd say this, but bless this game for having a British cast. It was very hard for me to rank this game because of all of its ups and downs. I feel like it's very easy to drop this game because of how monotonous it can get, but I think that it's still worth giving a go, even if there are a lot of things that it could have done better on. 3 out of 5.